After Tulsa King dropped a huge bombshell on the audience with the end of Episode 3, the Paramount Plus show undoes most of the resulting suspense in Episode 4. Staring Down the Barrel solves the crew's biggest problem in 42 minutes. Of course, there are threats made and intense stare-downs, but the sense of calamity has largely faded away. The theft of the 50 at the end of Episode 3 was a shock that put Dwight Manfredi and his crew behind the proverbial 8-ball. But one of the big reveals in Episode 4, that Serenity, the exotic dancer whose life Tyson saved, is actually working for Jeremiah Dunmire, is not a shock at all. Audiences likely guessed that from the moment Serenity appeared on screen. So when Tyson finds out, it's more of a finally than a real surprise. All that bit of information does is reinforce how Tyson has no business being a gangster. At least that leads to one of the better scenes in Staring Down the Barrel. Mark teams up with his son on a stakeout, having been in contact with Dwight, and gives his son some wise words based on his own history. Michael Beach is such an underrated piece of Tulsa King, and it remains great to see him continuing in the Taylor Sheridan universe after his character's violent end in Mayor of Kingstown. The dynamic between Tyson and his father is something special and a counterpoint to the life Tyson thinks he's building for himself. The episode actually belongs more to the returning guest stars from Tulsa King Season 2. Frank Grillo has a great scene as Bill Bevilaqua returns to help Dwight locate the missing bourbon and get revenge for the murders of his men. Bill storms into a henchman's house, goes through his threatening spiel, but then has to shoot the other man when a weapon gets pulled. Grillo is wonderful at the menacing part but even better when Bill has to explain to Dwight what happened. He's anxious and frustrated and almost manic. Staring Down the Barrel comes to a head when Dwight and company confront Dunmire at the warehouse where he's holding the 50. Dwight offers him an exchange, his son Cole for the bourbon. It's cringeworthy how little Dunmire cares for his son, though fans may have figured that out as well from their interactions in prior episodes. Still, the standoff ends with Mitch Keller driving the bourbon back to where it belongs. In that sense, this episode just closes the circle. Dwight has the bourbon, and Dunmire will try again to get it. Tulsa King Season 3, Episode 4 feels like a stop on the way to bigger things. Or hopefully that's what it is, because taken on its own, this episode lacks much rewatch value. The audience feels like they're ahead of the characters at this point, and that's not somewhere fans usually want to be. Yet if the show can engage its cast more, there's still opportunity for some fireworks. Welcome back to the Dixon Breakdowns, where we break down every mobster move, every betrayal, and every badass line from Dwight the General Manfredi. Today, we're diving deep into Season 3 Episode 3, titled The G and the OG, with full spoilers from the trailer, a lightning recap of where we left off, wild theories on the twists, and my breakdown of that gut punch ending. If you haven't caught up on Episodes 1 and 2 on Paramount Plus, pause this now and go binge. This is gonna be explosive. Let's roll. First things first, if you're jumping in blind, Episode 2 ended on a scorcher. Theodore's torched in that warehouse inferno, straight up revenge from the new big bad, Jeremiah, and his psycho son Cole. Dwight's crew is rattled at the memorial, vowing payback, but tensions are boiling. Special Agent Musso's got Dwight by the short hairs, whispering that he owns him now after that shady deal in Episode 1. And don't sleep on the family front, Tina's pushing Dwight to go legit for their daughter, while Cleo's dad is flip-flopping on his old rivalry with Bill Brewer. Cliffhanger. Dwight stares down Jeremiah's goons at a whiskey distillery handoff, gun drawn, as sirens wail in the distance. Brother, the whiskey wars just went nuclear. Alright, Episode 3 drops this Sunday, October 5th on Paramount Plus at 3 a.m. Eastern Time. Set those alarms, East Coasters. The trailer's out, and hoo boy, it's a 2-minute heart attack. Let's break it down scene by scene, no holding back. Spoiler alert, this EP's all about loyalty tests, a brutal ambush, and Dwight facing his past in the most OG way possible. The episode builds to Dwight cornered in an abandoned oil rig, Jeremiah and Cole closing in, Musso's feds circling like vultures. Dwight's bleeding out, flashing back to his prison days with Pops, the OG reference. He calls in a favor from an unlikely ally, Bill Brewer, who hates Jeremiah more. Boom, a hail of gunfire from Brewer's boys turns the tide. But the real gut punch? Tina walks in on Dwight mid-deal, gun in hand, and whispers, "It's over." Does she pull the trigger? Trailer cuts to black on her finger trembling. She doesn't shoot, it's a fake-out to force Dwight legit. But Cole escapes, setting up episode 4's manhunt. This ending screams, family first, forcing the general to evolve or die. Jeremiah made it clear in the premiere that he was going to be an obstacle, burning down Theo's country manse, with him in it, as revenge for selling his distillery to Dwight. And in the true manner of someone used to having things their way, Jeremiah isn't subtle about who was to blame. His goons brag about it in public. He and Cole show up at Theo's funeral. The whole thing's a theatrical message to Dwight, a way to compel him to take the money, 3 times what he paid, that Jeremiah is offering for the distillery. But Dwight doesn't take kindly to threats, and he's no fool either. If Jeremiah is offering that much for a distillery that hasn't turned a profit in years, there has to be a reason. The clue's in the title, The 50. Cleo reveals that Theo was sitting on a batch of 5-decade-old vintage bourbon that can fill 250 bottles at thousands of dollars a pop. Jeremiah knew it existed, but not where. It's the profit payload that Dwight needs to justify the risks associated with the booze business, and it's a compelling enough fortune to sway Bill to get in on the action to help with distribution. Even Cal Thresher, now a gubernatorial candidate, is reluctantly in Dwight's pocket, there to smooth over any complications with a few political favors should the need arise. That it feels like a win, but is it really? Tulsa King Season 3, Episode 2 reintroduces all of these key players but makes it very clear that they can't be relied upon. Bill is still on conspiratorial terms with Vince back in New York, whose takeover of the Invernizzi family seems to have backfired, and Cal would just as soon have Dwight killed as work with him. And everyone seems to know that Jeremiah means business. He's a credible threat, and he has no shortage of targets he can lean on to hurt Dwight. He sends Cole and some goons after Mitch, and while that ambush backfires, it proves he's willing to take action. Cole also seems to target Spencer at the end of the episode, who may prove a weak link. Then there's Bodie, whose lust for revenge is preventing him from making peace with Bill's men, and Tyson's father, Mark, whose reluctant agreement to fix the distillery's pipes might count as collusion as far as someone like Jeremiah is concerned. What I'm curious about, at least for now, is how all these major players and conflicting allegiances can all fit together into a coherent season. The only real downside of The 50 is that it all unfolds at such a clip that it can feel as if individual moments don't have much space to breathe. This is fine when it comes to, say, Tyson's relationship with Mark, since that has been ebbing and flowing since the very first season, but Mitch and Cleo, by comparison, feels a bit more forced. There's also a subplot involving Goody trying, hilariously, it must be said, to track down Armand, but one has to wonder whether we need yet another angle to be concerned about. Time will tell. If I had to make a prediction, I'd say that several main characters probably won't survive this season, and it wouldn't surprise me if at least one was killed off sooner rather than later to really set the stakes. Theo's death was tragic, but we just met him. If Jeremiah's whole thing is hitting close to home, everyone in Dwight's inner circle should be worried, and the vibe this season is giving off thus far is that it won't be pulling any punches. Flashback montage shows Mitch's subtle leaks to Dunmire for a cut of the action, driven by resentment over Jimmy's death and feeling sidelined. Dunmire monologues about old money versus your street scraps, then signals Russell to rough up Dwight. Dwight fights back ferociously, flips a table, cracks a bottle over a goon's head, but gets outnumbered. He escapes barely, bloodied, stealing a ledger proving Mitch's betrayal. Back at HQ, confrontation time, Mitch confesses, tearful, "You promised us the world, Dwight." Dunmire offered security. Dwight doesn't kill him, yet, cold mercy, "You're out. But if you breathe a word." Cue Mitch's exile, staring at the crew like a ghost.